But ladies and gentlemen, let me make something crystal clear. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you step into real power. Some of you are exhausted, not because of the work you're doing, but because of the energy you're wasting trying to be understood, trying to justify your choices, trying to make people feel comfortable with your growth. Let me ask you this. Why are you explaining yourself to people who aren't even qualified to understand your vision? Why are you handing over your piece like it's on sale? You don't need to talk about it, you just need to be about it. Stay with me, because this message, this truth, is going to change the way you walk into every room from this day forward. The moment you feel the need to explain yourself, ask why you feel that way. Truly ask yourself, what are you trying to prove and to whom? Most of the time, when you're explaining yourself, it's not because the other person genuinely needs clarity. It's because deep down, you're seeking some form of validation. You want them to agree with you. You want them to understand your reasoning. You want them to say, yes, you're right. But here's the truth. Real power doesn't beg for understanding. Real power stands. Real power moves. Real power doesn't need to be announced. And it sure doesn't need to be approved. Strong women, powerful women don't waste energy justifying their every move. They don't dilute their purpose by asking for permission to chase it. And they don't give people a seat at the table when those people never brought anything to offer but opinions. The need to explain often comes from a place of fear, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being labeled, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as too much, too cold, or too distant. But let me remind you of something. You were never born to be understood by everyone. You were born to walk a path that not everyone will recognize. And that's exactly why you must stop explaining yourself. There are people out there who will question your boundaries simply because they benefit when you have none. There are people who will accuse you of changing when you finally start choosing yourself. They'll say you're acting different. And you know what? You are, because you're growing. They'll say you've changed. And they're right. You're evolving. You don't need to explain that evolution to anyone. When a powerful woman finally realizes her worth, she stops broadcasting her every thought. She stops pleading for understanding. She doesn't feel the need to let everyone in on her process. Because she knows true growth happens in silence. Not because she's hiding, but because she's focused. She's locked in. She's walking forward with no need to turn around and narrate every step. The truth is, when you keep explaining yourself, you start shrinking. You start questioning your own decisions. You start entertaining doubt, not because you believe it, but because you've given it too much of a platform in your life. You open the door for people to analyze and critique a journey they were never called to walk. That's why powerful women don't explain. They let their presence do the talking. They let their progress speak. They let their peace be the evidence that they're walking in alignment, not approval. And here's what happens when you stop explaining yourself. You reclaim your energy. You protect your space. You gain clarity, because the time you spent crafting responses to people who never cared to listen, that time gets invested in yourself, in your purpose, in your craft, in your healing, in your elevation. You stop overthinking, you stop overspeaking, and most importantly, you stop overgiving to people who only take and never pour back. Some people will never see your value unless they can control it. And once they realize you no longer need their validation, they'll try to question your confidence. Don't fall for it. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is control. Silence is knowing exactly who you are and refusing to argue about it. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're not here to keep people comfortable. You're here to rise. You're here to build. You're here to walk in the fullness of who you are without asking for permission. Think about every powerful woman you've ever admired. Was she explaining herself to people who didn't understand her grind? Was she sitting around trying to convince people of her intentions? No. She was moving, she was building. She was growing in silence and letting her results create the noise. Because that's the truth about strength. It doesn't need to talk, it just shows up. It doesn't beg, it doesn't plead, it doesn't whine. It stands, it walks, it becomes. You've spent enough of your life trying to be understood, trying to be accepted, trying to make people feel okay with your boundaries, your decisions, your healing. It's time to stop. You don't need to explain why you're distant. You don't need to explain why you're quiet. You don't need to explain why you're no longer available for chaos. You're not disappearing, you're evolving. And that doesn't require a public service announcement. The people who truly matter will recognize your shift without needing an explanation. They'll respect your silence. They'll understand that your power is not in what you say, it's in how you carry yourself. So let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them talk. Because while they're talking, you're becoming. While they're speculating, you're elevating. While they're asking why, you're showing how. You don't need to explain yourself. You just need to be yourself. Fully, completely, unapologetically. Because when you move in silence, you move with power. And that's something no one can take from you. Silence is misunderstood. People think if you're quiet, you're weak. If you're not talking, you must be hiding something. But here's the truth. Silence isn't weakness, it's control. And control is the highest form of strength. When a woman chooses silence, she's not backing down, she's stepping up. She's choosing to protect her energy instead of pouring it out to people who don't deserve it. Too many people equate loudness with leadership. They think being seen and heard every second of the day means you're doing something powerful. But real power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to announce. It doesn't need to post every move or prove every decision. It just moves. Quietly, intentionally, strategically. The most dangerous moves are made in silence, and the most powerful people are the ones who know when to say something and, more importantly, when not to. You don't have to explain where you're going when you know the destination. When you're truly in control of your life, your mind, your emotions, you understand that silence allows you to lead without distraction. It allows you to listen more than you speak, to observe more than you react. And that's where wisdom lives. That's where growth starts. A woman in silence is not disconnected. She's dialed in. She's listening, watching, calculating her next step with precision. That's what power looks like. Not flailing emotions, not reckless words, but stillness, focus, purpose. You can't be powerful if you're constantly explaining, constantly defending, constantly reacting. That's not control, that's chaos. And the world is full of chaos. But a woman who chooses to be calm in a world of noise, she becomes magnetic, mysterious, respected. People won't always understand it, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the energy shift when you walk in the room, and not because you said anything, but because you didn't have to. That's what silence does. It builds presence. It builds mystery. It makes people lean in closer, wondering what's on your mind, wondering what you're planning. And you don't owe them answers. You don't owe them access. They'll see the outcome when it's ready. You don't have to explain the process. Silence also protects you. It keeps your business sacred. It keeps your moves hidden from people who would use your vulnerability against you. Because let's be honest, not everyone who asks how you're doing really wants to see you win. Some want information, some want gossip, some want to keep you small. And when you talk too much, you give them the blueprint to dismantle what you're building. But when you're silent, they have nothing to work with. Nothing to attack, no cracks to crawl through. That's protection. That's power. And don't confuse silence with passivity. Silence doesn't mean you don't have a voice. It means you've mastered the discipline of knowing when to use it. Some things don't deserve a reaction. Some people don't deserve a response. Some battles don't deserve your presence. And the more you understand that, the more powerful you become. Control isn't about dominating other people. It's about mastering yourself. Can you hold your tongue when someone's trying to provoke you? Can you resist the urge to defend your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place? Can you stay focused on your goals when the world is shouting in your ear, trying to distract you? A powerful woman moves in silence because she's already had the conversations with herself that matter. She doesn't need to explain her choices to people who didn't sit with her during the pain, the confusion, the rebuilding. They weren't there for the struggle, so they don't get to question the strategy. Silence is also where the real work happens. Growth happens when you step away from the noise. Healing happens when you stop explaining the pain and start facing it head on. Clarity happens when you cut off the distractions and go inward. When you stop asking for advice from people who haven't done what you're trying to do. When you realize not all feedback is valuable. Not every opinion is equal. Not every voice deserves your attention. And that's what silence gives you. Space to think, to reflect, to create, to realign. It's in that quiet space where ideas are born, where strength is sharpened, where character is refined. That's what makes silence so powerful. It's not empty. It's full of everything you need to become who you were meant to be. Powerful women move in silence, not because they're hiding, but because they're focused, because they've outgrown the need to be loud, to be liked, to be constantly visible. They've realized that true influence isn't measured by how often you speak. It's measured by the impact you leave when you do. When your life is aligned, when your purpose is clear, when your peace is protected, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain why you cut certain people off. You don't need to clarify why you're no longer available like you used to be. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of how you spend your time, who you trust, or what you're building. Because when the results show up, and they will, it'll all make sense. Let them wonder, let them talk, let them wait for the answers. You just keep moving, in silence, in strength, in control, because that's where real power lives. There is something profoundly powerful about walking away and saying nothing, about choosing silence over drama, distance over confrontation, not because you are afraid, no, not at all, but because you've learned that peace is more valuable than proving a point. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to clap back, post a paragraph, or chase closure. When you know your worth, you stop begging others to recognize it. It's a lesson every strong woman eventually learns, that your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop defending yourself, stop trying to get people to understand you, that's when you take your power back. Because not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table you built. And sometimes the most powerful move is simply walking away. No noise, no drama, just calm, confident distance. Some people feed off your reaction. They test your patience, push your buttons, provoke you on purpose. Not because they're right, but because they want to feel in control of you. The moment you bite back, the moment you raise your voice or try to prove your position, they win. Not because they were right, but because they pulled you out of character. And that's where most people lose their peace, trying to make someone see their point of view when that person was never listening in the first place. When you choose silence instead, when you walk away with grace, you confuse them. You take the power back. You send a message without ever opening your mouth. You don't get that part of me anymore. You've evolved. You've grown past the need to be heard by people who refuse to understand you. That kind of strength doesn't come easy. It comes from pain. It comes from experience. From staying up at night explaining yourself to people who still walked away, from sharing your heart only to have it thrown back at you, from giving your energy to people who only drain you in return, and after all of that, you realize you don't need to prove yourself tempting. There's something sacred about your silence, something unshakable. It's not indifference, it's self-respect. It's saying, I don't have time to play games with people who don't value truth. And when you finally realize that not everything deserves your reaction, your life changes. You stop chasing clarity from people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stop offering your voice to conversations that go nowhere. You stop letting people rent space in your head when they've never invested in your peace. Walking away in silence doesn't mean you lost. It means you're wise enough to choose peace over pettiness. It means you're mature enough to know that arguing with small minds only distracts you from your big purpose. That every moment spent explaining yourself is a moment taken from your growth, from your vision, from your focus. They may never understand why you chose to stay silent. They may think you're weak, passive, cold. Let them think what they want. Because your silence isn't for them, it's for you. It's your shield, your sanctuary. It gives you space to breathe, to heal, to think, to realign. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become everything you were created to be. You don't need to tell people you've changed. They'll see it when you stop reacting. When you stop showing up to arguments that go in circles, when you stop justifying your standards, your boundaries, your decisions, growth becomes loud in your silence. Your absence speaks volumes. The real ones will respect it. The rest will just wonder. That's the power of the quiet exit. No farewell speech, no long texts, no breakdowns, just distance and peace. You don't owe anyone a performance. Let your silence be your response. Let your peace be your clapback. Let your success be the final word. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a woman who chooses to walk away without a single explanation. That's not weakness. That's not surrender. That's evolution. And the people who once took your words for granted, they'll feel the shift when the silence falls. They'll realize the privilege it was to hear your voice, to know your thoughts, to receive your energy. But by then, it'll be too late. You've moved on. Quietly, powerfully, fully. No more explaining. No more defending. No more trying to make them see what they chose to ignore. Just silence. Just distance. In a future so bright, it doesn't need validation. There's a reason why powerful women don't announce every step they take. It's not because they're hiding. It's because they understand that true success doesn't need applause at every stage. Real growth happens in silence, in the background, in those late nights and early mornings when no one's watching. When a woman chooses to move in silence, she's not seeking attention. She's focused on transformation. You've got to understand, when you start broadcasting every move, every plan, every decision, you invite noise. You invite opinions. You open the door for doubt, criticism, jealousy, and distraction. And none of that builds you. All of it slows you down. Some people don't want to see you win. They smile in your face, ask how things are going, but they're not cheering for you. They're gathering intel. They're waiting for a moment to plant fear, to derail you with one sentence, one question, one look. That's why you protect your journey. You water your growth in private. You build the foundation without a crowd. Because not everything needs to be posted. Not every move needs a witness. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing and let the results speak for you. Let me tell you something. When a powerful woman disappears for a while, don't assume she's lost. Don't assume she's stuck. She's in the lab. She's working. She's building. She's healing. She's becoming. And when she reappears, she doesn't come back the same. She comes back evolved, sharper, stronger, unrecognizable to those who only knew the version of her that needed their approval. Moving in silence gives you space. Space to focus. Space to listen to yourself. Space to make mistakes without judgment. Space to course correct without interference. That's where the real power is, in knowing that you don't need validation to stay on your path. You don't need permission to elevate. You don't need an audience to win. A lot of people fail not because they didn't have the talent or the vision, but because they talked too much. They gave away the blueprint. They let the wrong people in the room. They shared ideas with people who had no intention of supporting them. And when those people started sowing seeds of doubt, everything slowed down. That's the danger of overexposure. Too many voices in your ear will drown out your own. Silence is clarity. Silence is strength. Silence is a weapon. It keeps your energy intact. It protects your dreams. It allows you to listen to your own instincts without the noise of the world pulling you in every direction. You stop asking, what do they think? And you start asking, what do I know? There's power in being underestimated, in letting people assume you're doing nothing while you're doing everything. Let them sleep on you. Let them talk about you in past tense. Because when you rise, and you will, there will be no explanation needed. Your results will be louder than any speech you could have given. You don't have to prove anything while you're building. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them ask questions you never answer. Because when you're locked in, when you're committed, when you're fully aligned with your mission, distraction becomes disrespect, and you stop entertaining it. There's something deeply sacred about a woman who knows how to move without being seen. She doesn't need a crowd to feel accomplished. She doesn't need a stage to feel valuable. She finds her worth in her work, in her discipline, in the quiet progress that happens day by day, moment by moment, without fanfare. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. The more private your moves, the less they can be manipulated. The less they can be sabotaged. The less you leave room for interference. Some things aren't meant to be shared until they're finished, until they're solid, until they can stand on their own. So protect your ideas. Guard your peace. Move with intention. If it's still fragile, if it's still forming, keep it quiet. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up every day to show people. You water it, you nurture it. You let the roots grow deep, and when it finally breaks through the surface, it speaks for itself. That's what moving in silence looks like. It's not secrecy, it's strategy. It's not fear, it's focus. You're not hiding, you're preparing. You're not lost, you're aligning. You're not absent, you're working. And when it's time, when the results are ready to speak, let them talk. You won't need to say a word. The day a woman stops needing validation is the day she becomes unstoppable. It's the day she takes her power back from the opinions, the expectations, the judgments of others. Because here's the truth. When you constantly seek approval, you hand over the steering wheel of your life. You let someone else decide your worth, your direction, your value. And for a powerful woman, that's not acceptable. You don't need them to clap for you. You don't need them to say, I'm proud of you, to believe in your journey. Because sometimes the very people you're waiting to hear that from will never say it. Not because you don't deserve it, but because they're too small to celebrate someone who's becoming everything they're not. You have to understand, people who haven't found their own power will always try to minimize yours. Let that sink in. They'll tell you you're too much. too strong, too ambitious, too quiet, too focused. Why? Because your presence reminds them of everything they haven't built. Your fire makes them uncomfortable. But that discomfort isn't your responsibility. You weren't born to dim your light to keep others comfortable. You were born to shine, to grow, to evolve. And not everyone will be able to handle that. And that's okay. You don't need to shrink just to fit into rooms that were never designed to hold your potential. You don't need to make yourself small so others can feel big. Powerful women don't explain why they dream big. They don't apologize for working hard. They don't justify their standards. They set the tone, and either people rise to meet it or fall back. Let me tell you something most won't. You don't owe anybody an explanation for how you choose to grow. You don't need to make sense to people who gave up on themselves. And you certainly don't need permission to pursue the life that's calling you. The path you're on, it's yours, tailored to your steps, your pain, your passion, your purpose. And some people just won't get it. Some will question it, mock it, doubt it. Let them. Their confusion is none of your concern. When you stop needing validation, you start building momentum. You start moving based on conviction, not approval. You start trusting your own voice, your own instincts, your own pace. That's where your power is, in trusting yourself, even when no one claps, even when no one sees the vision, even when no one else is in your corner. Some of your biggest breakthroughs will happen when nobody is watching. Some of your greatest moments will come in silence, when you're working alone, doubting yourself, but refusing to quit. You'll build strength in the shadows. You'll find clarity in solitude. And when the spotlight finally finds you, it won't be to validate you. It'll be to reveal what you already knew, that you were powerful all along. Let them talk, let them assume, let them misunderstand you. You've got bigger things to do than defend your name to people who never took the time to understand your journey. You don't owe explanations to anyone who wasn't with you when you cried, when you prayed, when you doubted, when you fought your way out of the darkness. The people who truly matter won't need you to prove anything. They'll feel your growth without needing a word. You don't need their applause to be valuable. You don't need their permission to rise. Your success, your peace, your healing, it's all valid, even if nobody acknowledges it. And when you stop chasing validation, something incredible happens. You become grounded. You become focused. You become dangerous in the best way possible, because nothing can move a woman who's anchored in self-respect. Nothing can shake a woman who knows who she is and what she brings to the table. That's when everything shifts. Your decisions become sharper. Your boundaries become clearer. You don't waste time trying to be liked. You invest time becoming better. You don't perform to please. You grow in silence, in strength, in self-awareness. And suddenly, the need for approval disappears. All that's left is purpose. Your purpose won't always be popular. It won't always make sense to those who choose comfort over calling. But that's not your concern. Your responsibility is to be faithful to your own growth, to your own goals, to your own peace. Not everyone will applaud you, and that's exactly why you must clap for yourself loudly, consistently, proudly, because you're doing the work, because you're showing up every day, even when it's hard, because you're becoming someone the world hasn't seen before. And you don't need validation for that. You just need vision. You just need courage. You just need the will to keep going without an audience. Because the real applause comes later, after the grind, after the struggle, after the transformation. And by then, you won't need it. You'll be too busy walking in your power.
A powerful woman doesn't need to broadcast her every move because her life speaks louder than her words ever could. She understands one truth that most overlook: Results are the only proof anyone ever needs. No explanations, no justifications, no performance, just results. You see, when you're truly focused on becoming your best self, the last thing on your mind is proving it to others. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to become undeniable. We live in a world where everybody's talking. They talk about what they're going to do, where they're going, who they plan to become. But powerful women, they move differently. They know talk is cheap. They don't get caught up in making announcements. They get caught up in making progress, because when your results are real, they will echo. They'll be felt. They'll be seen. Not by what you say, but by the shift in your energy, the glow in your presence, and the transformation in your life. That's the difference between noise and impact. Some people try so hard to be seen. They chase likes, attention, and applause. They're addicted to validation, and they exhaust themselves trying to be understood. But the truth is, nothing commands more respect than quiet execution. You don't have to scream success when you're living it. You don't have to explain your vision when it's unfolding in real time. The people who doubted you, the ones who dismissed you, the ones who thought you couldn't make it without their support, they'll be the same people watching in silence when everything you built starts speaking for itself. You want to know why silence is powerful? Because it doesn't give your enemies a map. It doesn't give the jealous a chance to interfere. When you stay low, focused, and grounded, no one can disrupt your process. And by the time they realize what you've been building, it's already too late to stop it. The world has a way of underestimating women who move quietly. They think if you're not loud, you're not working. If you're not posting it, you're not making progress. If you're not talking about it, you're not serious. But that's because they don't understand the value of intentional silence. Silence is where the real work happens. Silence is where the foundation is laid. Silence is where you turn vision into reality, not for the show, but for your soul. When you stop announcing your next move, you start mastering your current one. You become rooted. You become intentional. You stop scattering your energy trying to prove something, and instead you channel that energy into building something. And that shift, that focus, that's what separates a powerful woman from the rest. She's not chasing attention, she's attracting alignment. She's not talking about the life she wants, she's creating it. And don't get it twisted, people notice. They might not say it out loud, they might act like they don't see you, but trust me, they feel your growth. They see the way you carry yourself now. They notice the boundaries you've built. They see that you're no longer who you used to be. And it bothers some of them, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing what they want. You want to know what really silences your critics? Success, consistency, peace. The woman who used to explain herself is now walking in clarity. The woman who used to justify her decisions is now grounded in confidence. And the same people who once questioned your moves will soon study your results. That's the full circle. That's the victory. You don't owe them a walkthrough of your journey. You don't need to drag people step by step through your transformation. Let them see the finished product. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them sit in the silence they created when they chose to doubt you. That silence, that's your stage now. And your results are the standing ovation. Here's the truth. They don't need to understand you. They just need to witness you. They need to see the woman who kept her head down and handled her business. The woman who stayed silent when others were loud. The woman who chose peace over proving, growth over gossip, purpose over popularity. That woman, she doesn't ask for respect, she commands it. And when the moment comes, when you've finally arrived at the version of yourself you've been working toward, you won't need to say a word. Your life will say it for you. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you show up, people will feel the change before they even hear it. That's what real elevation looks like. So stay silent, stay focused, keep showing up even when no one claps. Keep building even when no one sees, and keep believing even when no one understands. Because your results are loading, your breakthrough is brewing, and when it arrives, it'll speak so loudly, there'll be no need for explanations. You are not here to be understood, you're here to be felt. You're not here to convince the world of your worth, you're here to embody it fully, boldly, quietly, relentlessly. And when the world finally sees what you've built in the dark, let that be the only thing that speaks. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Because the next time they see you, it'll be too late. The transformation will be done. And all the explaining in the world won't prepare them for the woman you've become in silence. So stop talking, stop justifying, stop watering down your fire just to keep the room comfortable. Let them feel your absence. Let them see your results, and let your silence be louder than anything you've ever said.